G'day. Welcome to the ATP project. You're with me and Steve today. I'm
and,
Matt.
Oh, where is he?
I've run out of reasons for him to
Reason from
spontaneously combusted again.
Yeah.
It's just us two today, Steve-O, and we're
Great.
talking about eating disorders inception. So we're discussing earlier trying to think of a catchy title and that sort of stuff for this. Because the podcast we're talking about today is eating disorders. We're going to be talking about anorexia, and in particular the nervous aspects of it, because it's fascinating because what we discovered in amongst it was some very weird links between anorexia, which is underweight and no appetite and that sort of thing, with obesity, which is overweight and overeating. We found very similar neurochemical behaviour in these people.
Very similar. And an interesting thing is, we're also going to be talking about bulimia, which is a different thing than anorexia. Anorexia is just starving yourself to get thin, inappropriately, I should say, not need to lose a few kilos because I'm overweight. And then you've got bulimia, which is the purging, and then you've got purging disorders too, which is a separate thing again. But the bulimia is another one where you may eat a lot and binge and then purge, and you feel guilty about it, so you throw it up, and it's a terrible disease. And it goes on for years for a lot of people.
Yeah, so the stuff we're going to try to discuss today is we've discovered some amazing links between how our eyes actually work and how our brain will decide what we see, and then our body will determine what our priorities are based on what our brain thinks we need to do. And our brains can be confused very easily.
Oh, very easily. And these diseases are very common in women too.
Yeah.
A ratio of about 10 to 1 or 4 to 1, depending on the study you read. So there's more women get this. So that gives us a clue of where it comes from and why. It happens in adolescence. So there's lots of interesting brain chemistry going on at that age.
Yeah, so what we will also help provide some solutions and some stuff you can try to do if you're suffering from any one of these conditions we mentioned. We'd like to give some practical tips, but I think what's really important for anyone out there that may be suffering with any one of these syndromes is to get a little bit of an insight and understanding of what's actually happening in your brain.
Yeah.
Because I had some basic rules in my naturopath clinic, which was I don't offer help unless someone asks. No one gets results unless they ask for help. If they were sent there by someone else because they felt they needed to, but they didn't want to commit. You don't get results unless you ask and make a commitment to actually get those results. So it's really important for people that have been told, oh, you need to do something about this, or told that, oh, your brain is just tricking you and all that sort of stuff. You need to be on medication. You need to be this and that. The problem is, for the poor victims of these syndromes, their brain's tricking them.
It's
no matter
tripping.
what you say, you can't trick them back.
No.
It has to be their own brain changing their reality. And this is why we talked about the word inception, because we're talking about perceived realities. We're talking about reality versus what your brain perceives it to be. We're talking about objective measurements of body compositions versus subjective opinions and that sort of stuff. So, let's get into it because...
Sure. Where do you want to start?
Well, I'll just quickly start with another little story, because the reason why I wanted to do this, so I've kind of dodged this podcast a little bit, mainly because I'm actually a bit overweight and I didn't feel I had any position to talk to people about being underweight or whatever. I didn't think I'd be any sort of a role model or an inspiration or have any sort of impact into these people's life. I didn't see why anyone would want to hear me talking about this. But an interesting thing happened. I always suffered from being overweight my whole life. And my wife was the same. She don't mind me saying this because we talked about it. I got permission. I'm a little bit scared of her, so I got a permission first.
Of course.
But so we discussed this. So what's really interesting about it is I talked to my wife and said there was a couple of moments in my life where I know I've flipped to being obese, or is when I realised I was overweight or obese. And when we're talking about it, and I specifically mentioned photos. And I mentioned 3 photos. And I tell you what's cool, because we're talking about it. And I said, yeah, man, I never forget. When I was a kid, there was this photo with me and my best mate sitting next to each other. I've actually got the photos. I've found them.
Yeah.
So, because what we were doing is we were talking about these photos. And then, man, I've got them. Mum sent them recently. So I went and tracked them out. Pulled out these photos that I remember so strong. I know the exact picture in my mind and from when I was a kid. I remembered seeing these photos that I hated. And anytime, and they were displayed around the house, and they were around. I used to see them all the time. I hated these photos like you would not believe, because I saw myself being so disgustingly fat in these photos. So what we did is we tracked down these photos, went and had another look at them. I was not fat.
No.
Okay? I was not fat. I'm looking at these photos. In fact, it was quite lean in some of those photos.
Yeah.
I remember so vividly in my brain looking at those photos as a child and the shame, the disgust, the feeling of disgust, that anxiety, that panic, that horrible feeling. Okay, and disgust is probably the best word for it. You hated yourself when you saw it. So I saw myself as really fat. I imagined myself to be fat. I imagined everyone else seeing me as fat. And fat kids do certain things. You know, they don't exercise well. They're not good runners. They're not actively this way. They eat too much, you know, and that sort of stuff. So I did that. I acted fat, and guess what? I became fat. My imagination or my brain's perception of that photo made me believe I was a certain way. So it created a belief system. I then created that. Now, what we've found with my wife was exactly the same thing. I started asking her, because she got to, I think, size 22 or something like that when she was in high school and by the end of high school and that. And I asked her, I said, when did you think you were first fat? And she was talking about this particular photo. And then we had a look at that photo. And the funny thing is, in that photo, there was a position where she was just standing in an awkward position that created a roll in the shirt and a dress or something that made it look that way, but it wasn't.
No.
But her brain, and no matter what people said to her, she saw something different. Yeah. Now, with me, in my photos, people would have said to me, oh, you're not fat, that's normal. Yeah. Your legs, so two of those photos were almost exactly the same pose, probably at 2 or 3 years apart or something, or 3 or 4 years apart, where I'm sitting on top of a fence or a log, and my legs were slightly squashed. My whole life, my mum talked about having fat legs. Oh, I hope you don't get my fat legs. I got fat legs. I hope your last name's Leg. You don't want fat legs. You know, blah, blah, blah. So then when I saw these photos and I saw myself sitting and my legs were squashed, I saw fat legs. I also had bad posture in the photo when I had some little rolls or some shirt, or you can't even tell. But everyone was telling me for years, no. But my brain, man, no matter what anyone said, I saw something totally different.
It's weird.
So I had not looked at those photos for 20 years. I'd forgotten them. My circuitry in my brain, that image wasn't handy. When I had a look, I can still remember the old image that I had in my brain. But now when I looked at these new photos with a different self-esteem or a different perception of my reality or a different understanding of my value in life and those sort of things, I look at this photo, I did not see the obesity. Yes. I did not see it. And in fact, now I look at it, I get so angry to think it changed my life.
Yeah.
The most disgusting thing about that, the first photo that changed my life, I think I was 3.
Yeah, you were young.
I looked 3, and what had happened, the story behind that photo, I'd recently been to hospital, I'd had a lot of prednisone, a lot of antibiotics for asthma and eczema, come out to play with my best mate. I had a very bloated belly. That guy out-angled me, the little prick. So he was 3 too, but that little prick already worked out how to out-angle. So he had his chest out and his cannons there, and I'm back and I'm slouched with his fat. So I saw that photo as a kid, and I was very competitive with that guy. He's my best mate. You know, it was always about racing and who's the fastest, who's the strongest, who's the smartest, all that sort of stuff. And I saw that photo and I was gutted. And I was just like, mate, I'm shorter than you, I'm fatter than you, and sicker than you, and all that sort of stuff. But I was 3, man. And this messed up brain. Yeah. Now, I'll stop talking in a sec. But another thing, if you remember the link in that photo that we talked about earlier, my gut was messed up. My gut was so round and so bloated. I said, I was on prednisone, which is a cortisol hormone that links into eating disorders and all that stuff. I had obviously a lot of gut issues. And there's a lot of gut issues associated with brain chemistry that we're going to talk about today. But I know I started our anorexia podcast talking about my excuse for being obese. The reason why I'm telling it, because the chemistry, the body dysmorphia in obesity and anorexia looks exactly the same.
Yeah, it's pretty similar.
I mean, we can't possibly tell because I don't know what your eyes see and what your brain thinks and vice versa, but on a biochemical level, it looks exactly the same.
Yeah, it does.
And so basically, if you have a look at the fact that you can start a process of believing you are a certain way, and I believe that the main difference, so the biochemistry is the same, but what I've seen in my clinical experience is if you see yourself fat, imagine yourself fat, there's different personality types. Some might be fatalistic and go, oh shit, I'm fat. And this is my excuse, I'm fat, you know, and you become obese. Then you get these other people, and it's a common trend with people with anorexia and eating disorders. They're rebels.
Yes.
So if they see a perception of being fat, they're not, and they're also overachievers. They're anxious. They are high go-getters sort of stuff. Yeah, highly strung. So with the people that perceive their imagination to be fat and then go, well, that's what I am. I am what I am.
Yep.
I'm going to convince myself that fat is beautiful.
Yep.
And I'm going to try to have some self-esteem with it and just go with it. And then there's another group of people that go, no, I'm going to fight against this. I see fat constantly. I'm a rebel. I know what I need to do. I don't want to be fat. I don't want to be this person. I want to be lean. And they force it. And now if you go through and say, man, you're beautiful. Like, you're perfect. You actually don't need to lose any more fat. Your fat is right. And that's what I'm saying. These people do not see it.
No.
Why, Steve? What's the biochemistry behind what's going on between your eyes and your brain that is then telling your stomach to do the wrong thing?
Can I blame the Western civilization for this one?
We do often.
Well,
we do often. Let's do it.
Paper published in Neuroendocrinology, and I'll get into the biochemistry a bit later and what's going on in the brain. But what we know is that the prevalence of anorexia and bulimia in non-Westernized countries is 0.002% to 0.09% compared to about 3 to 5% in Western populations.
So what are you saying?
That there's an extremely small amount of bulimia and anorexia in non-Western civilizations.
So are we talking about the nervosa stuff?
Yep.
No,
and bulimia.
Let's quickly, just because there might be some other people thinking like I do. So you're saying there's no anorexia in Ethiopia?
There's no anorexia nervosa.
Okay, cool. Yeah. I just wanted to clarify
and
that.
And anorexia means without appetite, so they've probably got an appetite. But here's the weird thing, and there's a study done here that says there was no studies in non-Western countries reporting the prevalence of bulimia without exposure to Western ideals.
Yeah,
so they had to be exposed to a Western ideal, and I mean what a Western ideal is, like you have to be thin and you have to be whatever. So and they found also that the Caribbean blacks have 0% of bulimia and anorexia, and in African Americans it's 0.15%.
Yeah, right.
So it's just like, now the Caribbeans, of course, think very differently. And in our area of the world, which is Australia, of course, for those who don't know, we have a lot of Pacific Islands in the area. And the other end of the extreme is they don't worry about body looks and that sort of thing. And obesity is number one in Tonga, which is the West. So that's the fattest nation on earth, is Tonga, not America. But because they just say, no, being fat is beautiful. So they have no anorexia.
Yeah.
But or bulimia, but they have very little,
and
they have massive obesity.
Wow!
So
the funny
there's
thing
a
is, when you
dichotomy.
first said it, I was actually, because my brain was still thinking about my own photos and that, and I was thinking, I wonder if it's because in these developing nations they don't have mirrors and photos. Because you know what I mean? Like, because I'm my this whole dysmorphia thing, it's really messed with my brain a bit because it's actually like, I don't know how to explain it. If it wasn't for me going back and looking at those photos. I would have thought, no, it's just a self-esteem issue. Because you got to realise, over the years, people say, no, you're not fat, you're solid, or no, that's normal. And I did not believe them. And you go, oh, yeah, okay. So I can imagine there's a lot of people out there with the anorexia nervosa, the bulimia and that, with people out there saying, you need to fix yourself, or you actually don't need to. You don't have that fat you think you have. These people will be going, oh, okay, I'll go see that naturopath you want, or I'll go to that trainer, or I'll go and do this thing. But if they don't believe it, and if they don't believe me when I say that the photos that you're looking at or the vision that you're seeing in the mirror is not actually what other people see. You are seeing something different. It's like your eyes are broken. There's something broken between your eyes and your brain, where your eyes are gathering data, your brain is seeing something else. Your body then's priorities totally change. Well, no matter what you say, Steve.
Well,
it's your fault.
Absolutely.
Westerner.
And Westerner. and of course, anorexics, is a different anorexia and bulimia. Anorexics, they can even jump on scales that give them an exact number of their weight and still think they're overweight. So the actual physical number, not like, oh, you look all right in that dress, darling, but the actual number is still said, no, I'm overweight. I don't care what the scales say. The scales are completely independent. They don't give a rat's who's standing on them.
You said before they had, there's a lot more women suffer from this than men.
Yes, they do.
Just coincidentally, I just thought this was interesting and I printed it off because it's not actually to do with this directly. It's actually a perception of body image and linked to depression.
Oh, yeah.
And they found it's actually something like 80% of the blokes, when 80% of men across the board, when they look at themselves and they get to pick a silhouette of where they think their body is, they typically pick themselves under. So blokes, as a general rule, will decide that they're underweight. Where, as a general rule, across this depression, people with body image, most of these people found that they actually had, with the women, they would pick the silhouette above their weight. So majority of women have picked themselves to be overweight. Majority of men picked themselves to be underweight. So it kind of makes sense, I suppose, that you'd see this higher incidence of anorexia. If someone suffered from anxieties and depression, their likelihood of picking the wrong body image was significantly higher.
Yes.
So they get running on gut instincts and intuition, long-term memory, and that sort of stuff.
Men are terrible typically when they go, yeah, I'm really lean and fit, except I've got a bit of a gut. And they've got this bulge out here. Yeah. And I remember in clinic, people would come in and say, I've got a bit of a lump here. And I'd be looking at the lump here, and there's a mega lump here. They ignore the mega lump here of gut, and they worry about a little lump here, which is but the perception is that, oh, no, I'm just got a bit of a gut. I'm really fit otherwise because I used to play rugby. It's always used to, or I'm trying to be more active. So there's another angle, but you're right. Men have this strange perception.
It's a large percentage. So with that lower percentage of men that suffer from the anorexias and things like that, they might be inclined to be just that very small percentage of the people with anxiety, depressions that perceive themselves to be much larger than they actually are.
Absolutely. And we know that anorexia, in contrasting to bulimia, anorexia typically occurs in women when they go through menopause, when they go through puberty. So that's when estrogen is much higher, and they're blaming estrogen being dysregulated because estrogen also regulates your appetite. Well, because you need estrogen to make serotonin.
And also too, man, I mean, we talk about this all the time, subcutaneous adipose tissue as opposed to the visceral stuff. What do you call subcutaneous? Scat, you talk about all the time. So that
I talk about it all the time.
So with estrogen, what estrogen does is estrogen will actually hold more fat and fluid under the skin on those hips. Like it's estrogen that does those weird pointy pockets that go out the side of the hips, and it's estrogen that'll hold fat on the lower back or the lower bowel and that sort of stuff, and a lot of fluid. So it also makes sense too then if you consider estrogen, xenoestrogens, oral contraceptive pills, all this new stuff, all this plastics and everything like that. Quite easily you could imagine increase in estrogen out of proportion to progesterone really early, especially going through that, what do they call it thing? Puberty. That's right.
Puberty, yeah. And puberty is when you start to ovulate, and ovulation is where you...
Is that what happened to you?
Yeah, that's happened to me. I've started ovulating.
And during puberty?
Yes, it was really nice. It's got the red pen out. So anyway, so this thing comes out called progesterone. But if you're stressed during puberty, which a lot of women are because they're stressed about things that we males wouldn't go, oh, that's not stressful, you're worrying about things. But they physically stress about things, and the problem with that is that stress increases cortisol. And we're going to talk a lot about cortisol.
And estrogen, and lowers progesterone.
Lowers progesterone, because progesterone's precursor, or the precursor to cortisol is progesterone. So it depletes progesterone. So there goes their thyroid. So T3 levels are lower too in anorexics and bulimia. Right. And it's also a response to
And all of those exactly the same hormones we talk about with obesity.
High cortisol. And cortisol makes you fat around the waist here and the cortisol belt. So it's a horrendous... And of course, anorexics are typically stressed.
So just quickly, while we're talking about cortisol then. So someone that's got high cortisol, because I can imagine people out here going, hang on, so you're saying cortisol causes obesity and anorexia? What a load of crap. Let us tell, just in perspective, in both of those, what cortisol does is it breaks down muscle and preserves fat.
It causes sarcopenic obesity.
Exactly. So what we're looking at is you can have a form of obesity but being underweight. And that is what the anorexic people know. They know that. They know they can be underweight and still fat. They know they can be skinny fat. And now the media talks about it stuck in their head. And no matter what you say, no, don't worry about that fat.
I've got no tone. And so a lot of anorexics over-exercise. Because they think they're fat. And Jeff gave a great story yesterday of someone doing the same.
And what are they doing in the exercise?
Oh, cardio.
So what have they done first, though? They bloody get up in the morning, have a look in the mirror. I hate myself. I'm disgusted. I'm going to go to the gym and torture myself and punish myself for being disgusting and stuff like that. While they're at the gym, what are they doing? looking in bloody mirror.
In tights.
They're just in tight. And the problem is, like I said, sorry to keep going back to these photos, but seriously, it took me 20 years of not seeing those photos to go back and see a different picture. It took for my brain to change, but not only for my brain to change, but for the circuits within my brain that had created that shortcut link to disappear and for new circuits to create. So what I'm saying is these people, excuse me, have got distorted perception.
Yes.
They then continually look in the bloody mirror. And then when you're training, you're looking in a bloody mirror. You know what we should blame is bloody Instagram photos of food. People eating food, they probably look at themselves eating food going, oh, I'm disgusting now. You know what I mean? It's like, I don't know. The frustrating part about this podcast for me is I don't actually know how to teach someone how to reboot your brain. Well, I don't know how to switch the bloody thing off and switch it back on again with a whole new, fresh set of eyes.
Well, you'd love to, but this is the whole problem. We're not going to come up with the great solution here, but we've got some great ideas. Of course, high cortisol, just leading on from that, also suppresses a chemical in the brain called serotonin.
Yes.
Which is the relaxation, calm, keep yourself happy, regular appetite sort of hormone. So, of course, one of the great treatments for bulimia is super high doses of fluoxetine, which is a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. And this has some effect, a positive effect on bulimics. It has to be about 60 milligrams in the study. 20 or 40, like normal doses, don't work. Now fluoxetine, to those who don't know, there's lots of names for it, but one of the names is Prozac. It was classically an antiviral drug. Used. So if you wanted to talk about the virus that it knocks out there, fluoxetine.
No, we can have an episode without talking about a cocksucking virus.
We'll get rid of that one then. Did you see that?
Bloody good shot, man.
Yeah, good shot.
That would look good on the camera.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway.
So this fluoxetine is...
Preserve serotonin?
Yeah, preserve serotonin in the brain. Now, the $1 million question is cortisol's getting rid of serotonin out of the brain, but there's something else happening to serotonin. We did a podcast on that.
Yeah.
And do you want to talk about that beautiful pathway?
Well, only because I don't know how to pronounce
kynurenine.
So, we've done a podcast on this.
Yes.
I bloody stuttered the whole way through it. But the kynurenine pathway. So basically, in our body, tryptophan can be converted into serotonin.
Yes.
85% of that occurs in the gut.
Yep.
And then sent to the brain, where it has this calming...
Relaxing.
Kind of satiety, hey, you're kind of cool kind of thing.
Relaxing.
Like where you look at a picture of yourself and go, man, whatever,
reality.
Cool, sweet, happy with that, whatever. And it does satiety, it does contentment, it does sleep, it stops your brain and everything. Most of that's made in your gut. When you're starving, when you're stressed, when you're under attack, when you're infected, when you've got all these inflamed, your tryptophan can go down a different pathway called the kynurenine pathway, which triggers anxiety, it triggers worry. We call it the tryptophan steal.
Yep.
It takes tryptophan away from serotonin and down a pathway where instead of being a calming chemical, it's a chemical that induces anxiety. And this is actually not a tryptophan serotonin brain problem. That's actually a gut problem.
Yes.
And also a systemic energy problem.
Yeah.
If you're exhausted, if you're fatigued, if you're down, converting tryptophan away from the sleepy chemical and towards a chemical that will drive your energy production is very important when you need to hunt and gather.
It's a great... I mean, we call it the tryptophan steal, and it sounds like a bad thing, but it's a really thing that, from an evolutionary point of view, has made animals survive. I mean, if you didn't have that and there was a big dinosaur chasing you, then you go, oh, well, I won't worry about it. I'm cool. I've got loads of serotonin. You don't want serotonin in your brain when you got a dinosaur.
No.
And like
if you're not punching and running, you should be hiding.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but of course, dinosaurs are short-lived and stresses are short-lived. We didn't have a mortgage on the cave. We didn't have to worry about financial stresses. So these stresses were short-lived. But if you've got a chronic stress and you've got high cortisol, so you got low progesterone and you got high estrogen there and you got dysregulated androgens because cortisol is detoxified by the same enzyme as testosterone, the 11-hydroxysteroid beta dehydrogenase enzyme. Sorry about the long word. But these enzymes get clogged and your whole hormonal system is messed up.
Yeah. And if you consider like the malnutrition straight away, it makes it harder for the cofactors to work. But a bigger priority of that is the macro malnutrition for the body, because it actually, our metabolic rate shuts down. So you mentioned earlier low T3.
Yes.
Now, one of the reasons for that is because when we're stressed, when we're inflamed, when we're not having adequate calories to maintain our muscle mass and bone and organs, our body will convert the T3 to reverse T3 to slow down your metabolism.
Yes.
So the end result is, guess what? You preserve fat,
Yep.
and you break down your muscle to get through your day. Then when you look at the mirror, you're still seeing that same fat not changing. Your body may not even be able to see your muscle. Its focus is stuck on this particular role or this particular body shape or this particular issue that will not budge no matter how much you lose. As you lose muscle and other things go out of whack, those subcutaneous pockets of fat become more obvious.
Yes. Of course they do.
Yeah.
And the other bad thing is that when you quote, and I'll simplify anorexia and bulimia to basically low calories. I mean, this is the result thing. You get different microbiome growing, and there's one that's called the Methanobrevibacter, which is a microbiome which, for $1 million, have a guess which gas that produces. It produces methyl gas and methane gas. So therefore, the methane gas causes bloating in your guts.
Yeah.
So your gut sticks out.
Yeah, yeah.
And so you've got this gut sticking out, and everyone's going, I'm trying to lose that gas at the gym.
Exactly.
And that's because of starvation.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen, Ethiopians you mentioned before with bloated guts?
Yeah, yeah.
That's because of the distension due to the microbes being starved.
Yeah.
And they grow these bacteria to grab as many calories out of the food as possible. Again, it's survival instinct.
Yep.
But the side
Same
effect
with
is
leaky gut wall. There's more leaky gut wall for a couple of reasons. I mean, malnutrition creates leaky gut wall, but also it's actually a bit of a survival mechanism to create a leaky gut wall. For starters, you can actually strip the nutrients out of your gut wall to fuel your brain and organs, such as things like glutamine will be used as precursors to other amino acids if you're not eating other protein. But basically, your whole gut wall will be shut down. And the bigger the holes in the gut wall, the more stuff you absorb.
Exactly,
so
like a baby.
it's sitting there going, I can't afford to let this stuff pass through. I'm going to take in absolutely everything I can. Exactly. Which is why certain deficiencies of things like zinc and that are some of the most common causes of leaky gut wall, because your body wants to absorb more food to liberate the zinc out of the phytate-bound complexes.
Absolutely a terrible situation, and these usually women struggle with this in huge rates, up to 5% in our Western population.
Yeah.
And the problem with this is it's one of those diseases, unfortunately, that still is like depression. It's like I'm embarrassed to have that disease. Like if I broke my arm riding a motorbike over a cliff just to do a stunt, I'd be proud of it. Boys and Jeff would be stoked, and everyone would be but I've got bulimia. Oh shit. Yeah. That's and unfortunately we have this stigma around it, and it's terrible because
But if you think about let's think about it. So you mentioned cortisol's high.
Yes, it is.
That comes high when the sympathetic nervous system is running.
It is.
So the sympathetic nervous system is our survival response. Typically, when you're starving, when you're low, but also when you're stressed. There's a lot of reasons for your sympathetic nervous system to be running because your body can't afford to wait to see what your stress is. No. So one time it might be low calories, another time it might actually be bills, mortgages, that sort of stuff you said. Your body doesn't know the difference. Sympathetic nervous system, what it does is it screws with your eyes.
Yeah.
It also screws with your brain. So the sympathetic nervous system, it drives your innate survival response. That's our belief system. That's our culture. That's our long-term memory. That's our autopilot. That's our what did I do last time I was in this situation? Or what does that music remind me of? You know, those weird-ass sort of things, the sympathetic nervous system. So sympathetic nervous system will help your eyes find the exit. They'll find the horizon. During a survival response, attention to detail, close vision, taking in the new, fresh data is not helpful. You can't read a map. You can't study in the sympathetic nervous system, which means you are stuck in autopilot.
Yes.
You are stuck with gut instincts and intuition, which is screwed up because of the chemistry.
Yep.
You're sitting there thinking you've got this gut instincts and intuition, but you don't. You've got this tryptophan steal weird shit going on. So with the sympathetic nervous system, gut instincts, long-term memory, far vision. So what these people, when they're looking at themselves and they're in a sympathetic nervous system, they're not gathering the new data. They're not studying things properly. They're not capable of doing that because they're stuck in a long-term belief system that you cannot break by counselling.
Yes.
You cannot break that by saying, no, I want you to look in the mirror and say you're beautiful. Maybe you can. I shouldn't do that. I'm not a psychologist, but you might be able to retrain that sort of thing.
Cognitive behavioural
not if you
therapy
don't bloody believe it. If you don't believe it, you can't look in there. Because, seriously, man, I was messed up looking at those photos. I saw something, and I didn't care what anyone said. To the point that I used to go, oh, okay, yeah, cool. Oh, yeah. And I'd even pretend. Oh, yeah, stocky. Woo.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I used to pretend and for him to shut up. And I'd go to the dietitians or I'd go do these sort of things or whatever, but just to shut him up.
Absolutely.
Because I did not believe it.
Yeah.
I had created my own reality through my own imagination. And when I say imagination, it wasn't my choice. If I was my imagination, I would have been Han Solo. But my own imagination created me as an obese fella, which I then became. So, but it's not so much my imagination. It was what my brain was gathering out of the data from my eyes.
Yeah.
I mean, our eyes are getting things upside down and back to front, and then gathering and putting that into our brain. Well, you were saying something the other day that part of evolution was to be able to see another colour so we can see when the fruit ripened.
Oh, yeah.
Like that sort of shit. Like our brain, we do not realise that I don't know what you see.
No.
Okay, and you don't know what I see.
We agree that's a bit of paper and that's a bit of blue arrows on it.
But it could look like binary code using your eyes or pixels using your eyes, and it could look like something totally different. I'm red-green colourblind apparently, and I spent my whole life with people pointing at red things.
I've been fishing
saying
with you,
it's
mate,
red, and pointing at green things and saying it's green. So when I think I can see all the colours because I've point at them and I can see them.
Yeah.
What I can't see, I obviously don't know is there. But I'm just trying to say that our brain is confused. Counselling will do a certain amount, but you have to believe it. And if you're out there with an eating disorder right now, and you think you're doing the right thing, and you think everyone's idiots, saying you don't know what I know, or you don't know my body, or I can see this stuff. Stop trying to be nice. Stop trying to sabotage my goals.
Yes.
Because a lot of them say, don't try to sabotage my goals. I've got to get rid of this fat. No one's going to stop me.
And it's this one piece of fat on the side of your leg.
Exactly.
And the scary things about
which you can get rid of by building muscle around it.
Well, just get liposuction or get some subcut.
Well, exactly. Now, I've been in... I got a hate campaign. Lynch mob wanted to attack me once for recommending subcut to someone with anorexia. But when I spoke to this person and they said, I've just got this weird pocket of... I cannot bloody move. Yeah. And they said, no matter what I do. Yeah. And I said, why don't we just move that pocket? And so we created a transdermal product just to move that bloody thing. The funny thing is it was temporary, and I even said it's probably going to be temporary because your body's putting it there in case you get pregnant and you start being starved when you're pregnant. Your body's holding that pocket on your hips for that.
Yes.
And I said, so I just want to prove to you we can move it, and it's got nothing to do with your metabolism, your obesity, your laziness, whatever. It's structurally your body's putting it there for a reason.
Yes.
So let's screw with it just to prove to you we can.
Yes.
And then you can see
it's
what
gone.
It looks like when it's gone. And it works. Like you can do block E3 for the little weird pockets, subcut if you've got just an area of looser skin and that sort of stuff that's holding fat and fluid. But, man, the stuff works.
Yeah.
And, man, they got so mad at me. And I said, no, I'm not. It's not a metabolism thing. I'm not telling them not to eat. I'm just showing them that you can take control of your own body and move those weird pockets so you don't have to reduce the rest of your body. It's almost... And I explained that their strategy for this fat loss on their hips was almost like chemotherapy for cancer. So, just to explain that further, so chemotherapy with cancer is chemotherapy kills all cells. Okay.
Eventually, yeah.
We're hoping that we've got more cells than the cancer cells.
Yeah.
So what happens is our cells are high, cancer cells are low. The chemo kills both. All cells decline, and we just hope that by the time we kill off the cancer cells, we still got enough of our cells left. This is almost the strategy that people are using for fat loss on these weird pockets. Yeah. They're depleting their body so much that they're hoping that their body will, if they lose all of their cells, the fat's going to go as well. The reality is the opposite. What happens is your body will build and preserve the subcutaneous fat stores as a survival mechanism if you're losing too much body cells. Huh?
Absolutely it will. And we know from that sort of data that if you stress your body out by having the wrong sort of bugs in your gut, and we get this a lot with the bodybuilders who diet restrict, and they haven't got bulimia or anorexia, but they diet to a point where the body thinks they're starving.
Yep.
And then they go off this really low calorie diet and they're stuck on all this weight. It's to do with the low thyroids, the high cortisols.
Yep.
And, of course, the bacteria in the gut that we mentioned before in the food mucus. So the body just goes, right, there's food, quick, suck it all up for months to come so I don't starve again.
Yeah.
And that's, and that's called, reverse dieting. And we could do a podcast on that, frankly.
Yeah.
But with bulimia and anorexia, it's a little bit different too because there is some brain abnormality changes.
Yeah, bring
and
it
we
on.
know that there is I'll really simplify the brain. There's 3 parts to your brain. This is really simplifying. You got the middle part that does things subconsciously like my heartbeat, my temperature, the hypothalamus, that sort of shit. Then you got the lizard part of your brain, which is like your drives to drink, your food, your sex, that sort of thing, called lizard brain. Then you've got the top part or the cortex of the brain. And in bulimics and anorexics, they have a thickening of the cortical part, which is the top part, the frontal cortex part of the brain. So that's the higher executive functioning. So there's data out there showing, and these are papers showing executive functioning in anorexia and bulimia, and their executive functioning is depleted. Now,
So problem solving.
problem solving is one of them, planning, attention control, and what they call fluid intelligence, which means that intelligence in certain circumstances. They don't like change.
Yeah, but that's all that sympathetic nervous system.
Yep, absolutely.
That is the sympathetic nerve, isn't it,
Yeah.
Steve-O?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the sympathetic nervous system
stress them
does
out.
gut instincts, intuition, autopilot,
Yep.
long-term memory.
Yep.
The parasympathetic nervous system does your problem solving, your attention to detail, your focus, gathering new data, but even short vision to be able to bloody read and take in a proper data from your eyes for things that are close.
Yeah.
So that goes back. So if you also consider sympathetic nervous system creates high cortisol, creates leaky gut wall, digestive problems, the sympathetic nervous system then is driven immediately in response to inflammation and immune problems.
Absolutely.
So if we consider that 80% of your immune problems, 80% of your immune system,
Your
and
gut.
therefore possibly 80% of your immune problems are going to be coming from your gut.
Yeah.
So this vicious cycle between the nervous system keeping you in survival autopilot mode, whether that's due to perception of your body image, or whether that's due to inflammation itself, or whether that's due to malnutrition or whatever, you're stuck in... These people are stuck in sympathetic nervous system.
Very much so.
Very hard to break that cycle. That's why we talk about the defensive posture. Those podcasts we have with Ken Ware and then even like Luke Lehman, he talks about the Thrive and Svive and it's all starting to come around this whole somatopsychic thing. We always thought that we can achieve anything with our brain.
Yes.
But our brain's an idiot a lot of the time because it's gathering data and creating weird, stupid shit.
Well,
This is the problem with
mental
this. So
disorders.
don't rely on your bloody brain. Your brain's wrong.
Well.
But because it's such a powerful thing and we're tricked into thinking we can achieve anything with mind power, sometimes you've got to stop thinking and start doing. And just trying to get out and break that cycle. But so let's go. Sympathetic nervous system, cortisol.
Yep.
We're getting all that inflammation. We're getting leaky gut wall. That's totally screwing up with our gut's ability to brain chemistry. Microbiome may totally change as well in response to the calories, the nervous system, the immune dysfunction. So this is a big bloody vicious cycle these people are stuck in.
Of course they are. And where it may start, and this is a very recent paper in the cortex having problems, the prefrontal cortex, is really interesting because that may be the start of. Now you've got to remember the cortex is the part of the brain that says like okay, let's say I'm really hungry now, and my lizard brain was thinking I'd just go and eat and stuff the podcast. But my cortex goes, no, don't eat. I'll eat later, lunchtime.
Yeah.
And the cortex also stops me from just having sex with a random woman on the street because my cortex says, no, that's completely inappropriate. And it shuts down. But in
Where do you get these cortexes?
That's his cortex. Well, there's not many animals with it. I mean, they call it lizard brain because lizards don't have them, but dolphins have them.
Yeah, right.
The cortexes, monkeys do, of course.
So that's why I don't see dolphins having sex on the street.
Well, yeah, not on the street. No, they don't have sex. They do have a missing part of the cortex. They've got a hole in their head,
Yeah, I've noticed that.
So
they don't have eating disorders.
No, they probably don't. Or maybe they. But this is the dysfunction of the cortex. So this is a really interesting breakthrough study that they found on MRIs, the thickening of this cortex, which means there's some sort of dysfunction there.
Yeah.
Now,
what will cause a thickening of the cortex?
That's the million-dollar
Is that
question.
an inflammatory thing?
Possibly
or is it?
hormonal dysfunctions, because progesterone is extremely beneficial for the growing of the brain. In fact, when you have a traumatic brain injury, one of the first things they give is progesterone and cortisone to reduce the swelling.
It's a very weird topic podcast for me to keep talking about myself. But something crazy, I had this branch fall on my head once when I was playing golf. I played the best game of golf I've ever played after that. But anyway, and I had to go get an x-ray because I got a little depression fracture in my skull. And I tell you what's interesting, though the comments come out and said, my brain is an anatomical variation to the norm. That was in the comments of the thing. And I think I've never had sex with a dolphin in the street, but a lot of those things you're talking about there, my brain might be a little bit weird.
Well, I mean, this is not necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah,
I mean, with the new MRIs and the details, they're now discovering more things that they used to. So the executive functioning is also planning and decision making, too. So they have problems with that. So
Yeah,
a decision might be, hey, don't throw up.
Yeah.
Because that's logic. Don't eat and then throw up.
Yeah.
But that sort of decision and troubleshooting. So I don't like changes in routines.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, hang on, that stresses me out.
And so if I was to come to you, so
Yeah.
just imagine you're this person,
Yeah.
and I was to come to you and say, you're killing yourself.
Mm.
You're dying. You're killing yourself. And you need to eat more food. You need to bulk up. You need to eat more, and I'm gonna put you into a hospital and force feed you.
Yeah.
If that sort of stuff's going around your brain,
You can't do anything about it.
what are you going to do? You're going to go back to these people and just either play the game
Yeah.
and pretend along the way because you don't actually believe
You
them.
don't believe it because
Yeah.
your brain is always, well, I'll say, right into
yeah.
yourself.
Yeah, of course.
And people, there's disease like schizophrenia where people hear voices.
Yeah.
And these voices are telling them, and they're real to these
Yeah.
people. I treated one of the first person when I was in student clinic a million years ago, was a lady who broke both her ankles because she was chased off the balcony by the devil because she married Jesus.
Yeah.
Now, you can't tell me she was lying to me because she broke both of her ankles jumping off the friggin' balcony to get away from the devil.
Yeah, yeah.
And, this is a scary thing. And she was looking me in the eye that's what happened. And
Well, with those, truly crazy people do not think they're crazy.
no.
And that's what used to be a thing I used to say in my clinic. People come in and say, oh, I think I'm going crazy. I said, well, good news is you're not.
No.
Because if you were, you would
That-
actually be out there
'cause-
telling the world we're idiots.
Because this is not, you've got to remember these diseases. It's obvious if you're underweight, you eat more and But these people with these things, they also have a problem with resisting temptations.
Yeah,
That's an
right.
executive function because remember the cortex tells you to resist that sort of thing.
Yeah,
Now, so they'll say, no, look, I shouldn't eat heaps of food and then throw up, but they do.
Yeah.
And it's like, are they idiots? No.
Yeah.
They've got a
So it's like willpower stuff here.
willpower. Yeah, you're resisting temptations.
But I would assume that someone that's starving themselves and driving them so hard with their exercise would have lots of willpower.
Well, they have willpower, but resisting temptations
They can't change. They're stuck in the inability to change.
Because their motivation is coming from their own brain. Now, when your motivation's not... Like if I said to you, go to the gym tomorrow morning, you go, I don't want to. But if your brain tells you to go to the gym, you'll go to the gym.
Yeah.
Because it's convinced
It's my
with you.
idea.
Yeah, it's your idea. And this is their idea. Also, new areas of work they struggle with. Troubleshooting decisions and that sort of thing is for an executive function. And this was a big meta-analysis done. And here's the results. It showed pretty much all the studies, and we'll have to zoom in on this one, but basically all the studies showed that their executive functioning was lower, and the meta-analysis showed that they were all a lot lower, which means that these are all the functions of the executive functioning in the prefrontal cortex. So if that's playing up, then you've got very, very, you're in a situation that's very difficult to treat because all of a sudden their brain is having these problems with it. And this is an amazing breakthrough I found, in the literature.
Yeah,
But
because this is what I'm stuck at. I mean, we all know how to screw with someone's macros and micros to change your body composition, but the hard bit is trying to make it their idea.
Yeah, exactly.
And if it's not their idea, it's not going to bloody work. So hopefully they're listening to this going, oh, maybe what I am seeing is not right. Now, maybe the science, I'm just trying to say the science is saying what you see and what you believe may not be the reality. Your perception of reality has been altered because of this.
Yeah.
We were talking before about the nervous system, the guts, the inflammation. We mentioned how the gut gets knocked out of whack.
Yep.
And that changes brain chemistry.
It does,
blah, blah. I've got another little diagram here. We'll provide these documents.
Yes.
Again, this isn't directly on anorexia or obesity or anything, but it actually shows the different pathways which the allergy, intolerance immune system, chemical sensitivity immune system, the infection, the viral immune system, or straight up stress do exactly the same stuff to your brain and create behavioural changes. So this is what people got to understand is we may not be able to directly come in and break this cycle of perception over reality. That's got to happen from within,
tough,
okay?
yeah.
You got to do that yourself. But if we were to be able to take away some of the sources of inflammation. If we were to, so for example, looking at this diagram, there's humoral pathways, allergies and intolerances, which is usually gut-derived inflammation. Neural pathways, us relating to stress triggers, data coming in from our nervous system. Cellular pathways referring to viruses, bacteria, microbiome, a lot of those sort of things. If we were to eliminate the imbalance in the immune system, the inflammation, if we were to correct a lot of those gut dysfunctions, then we might be able to remove a lot of the triggers that's keeping these people stuck in a pattern or stuck in an autopilot. And if we can start doing that and start removing the layers of burden that is clouding their judgment and clouding their vision and altering their perception and their reality and therefore their imagination, we might be able to break the cycle, as opposed to going in saying muscle, bone, hormones.
Yes.
You know?
Can I take you back to 1939, pre-war? This is how actually, no, this is 1918, this paper. This is a very old paper, as you can tell by it. It's one page.
Yeah.
Guess how they used to treat anorexia back then?
How?
They used to mix small doses of cocaine in the food to make the food more addictive so they eat more.
Wow.
I just thought that was a bit interesting.
Isn't the Hollywood diet cocaine? That's how they all lose weight in Hollywood.
Oh, well, of course it does.
So the addiction. They make them addicted to food.
Food, yeah, absolutely. Because remember, cocaine was a completely legal drug back then.
So my dad. Oh, in my day, we used to work real hard, go to the well on the way to school. I did 20 Ks in the snow. Yeah, Dad, your bloody soft drink had cocaine in it.
It did.
Your little pouch had snuff in it. Like, of course you were going to run around like an idiot doing all that extra work.
Oh man, if I drank cocaine and that sort of thing, I'd be absolutely.
It'd be funny to see, actually, Steve.
Oh God, I'd be terrible.
We have to do that podcast.
Look, back in the olden days, this is a paper from 1939 January. The treatment for these sort of bulimics was just eat and shut up, and you've got to counsel the mother and the daughter in this case, and just tell them to eat and that sort of thing.
They said the mother and the daughter.
Yeah, you have to get, because they always blame the mum for bringing up the child. This is 1939. This paper.
Yeah.
So quite. They termed it in 1694. They termed it a nervous atrophy, which I actually like the name of.
Yeah, that is actually really cool.
It's like these people are just nervous and atrophy, and that's where anorexia nervosa was actually first coined by the Queen's physician in 1896. So it's a relative, I say new term, but it's a relative.
For you, it is. I mean, you were 12 when that happened.
Yeah, I was 12. So look, this is the altered cortical thickness that paper.
So I don't think. I mean, might be.
Yeah.
It's probably a bad thing to say, but
here we go.
I don't actually... Look, he's got his pen out ready.
Yes.
No, I don't actually think we're going to break this cycle and fix this condition by fixing the neuroendocrine systems.
No.
I don't think... If I was to fix the cortisol...
Yep.
Because don't forget, we got the same biochemical imbalances in anorexia as we do obesity.
Yes.
There must be an end result of something that's gone wrong, not the cause.
Yeah.
Because if they caused it, why would these people be so bloody opposite?
A lot of people, quote, grow out of this disease, and I'll use that term.
Yeah.
And I don't mean it, it doesn't mean it's just a childhood disease, but a lot of people take about 6 to 9 years to get over these diseases.
Is that right?
Yeah. And they...
Man, that's wild with the 7-year cycles. All the natural medicine, everything, they always talk about the 7-year cycles.
I remember that,
Remember asthma, 7-year cycles? But that's not even the naturopaths that talk about 7-year cycles, things like asthma.
And one of the reasons is because the cortex is one of the areas of the brain that atrophies as we age.
Yeah, right.
And so if theirs is thicker, it becomes... quite normal.
Oh, yeah.
So there's a nice graph in this paper that shows that.
Yeah.
But basically, the cortical thickness actually drops, and so it becomes kind of, dare I say it, closer to normal.
Yeah, wow.
And so this is why they typically get over the disease. Like, bulimics don't last into the late 60s, 70s, 80s. You don't hear that. It's usually a younger person's disorder.
No, that's when they just change the diagnosis, don't they?
Something like that.
Osteoporosis.
Yeah. Well, bulimics do get osteoporosis. Yeah. They get terrible dental caries because, of course, you're pushing acid past your enamel all the time.
Well, let's work something out. Let's work out a bit of a plan.
Sure.
You cool with that?
Yeah, very much so.
There's no more tech, really?
Oh, there's heaps of medical complications.
Eh?
That's all right. We'll go to treatment.
But we'll get to, because the big thing I want to say to people, there are so many treatment options.
Yes.
We talked about cortisol. We talked about insulin. So I probably wouldn't start there.
No.
Because I think manipulating those is not going to fix the problem. And they're going to be, it's going to be a management issue to manipulate the hormone profile. I would start with the gut.
Yes.
I would start with a product like Gut Right because it's full of these modbiotics. I would actually prescribe Lactobacillus firmicute bacteria because there's another stage of our life where we've got a leaky gut wall, where we've got disrupted immune system and weird potentials to become overweight, underweight, and all that sort of stuff. And that's basically childbirth and the early life events and that sort of stuff. So the socially acceptable breast milk applications we can do now is actually regulating the gut flora, putting in Lactobacillus plantarums or Lactobacillus rhamnosus, a big variety of the Lactobacillus firmicutes, but take it with modbiotic compounds so that we don't overgrow the firmicutes to a point, because firmicutes help the body to rebuild the gut wall. They will help to increase the calorie yield slightly from the food and change the way their body responds to the food, so we can get more calories into our body without actually screwing around too much with the gut. But it's really important to manage the gut microbiome, because other firmicutes, such as E. coli and Clostridiums and that sort of stuff, can be the culprits behind the tryptophan steal. So using modbiotic compounds, Gut-Right's the only one that I know of, because, anyway, mix that with some Lactobacillus forms of probiotics to try to regenerate that gut wall.
Yes.
Definitely got to put some micronutrients. So the multi-food product, which contains the low doses of the zinc, so along with all of the other vitamins and minerals in their natural form, so that they can be absorbed easily through passive diffusion, as opposed to needing to drive active transport pumps out of a leaky, weaker gut wall.
Yeah, synthetic vitamins wouldn't be beneficial.
So the Gut-Right, and then basically Resilience is another product of ours. I'm just listing a product names, but I'll tell you the mechanism of action if you don't want to use them. But Resilience contains the frankincense, the myrrh, the turmeric, that are very good, powerful anti-inflammatories on that innate, and they will balance the immune system when it's out of whack. So you got to look at them as an adaptogen for your immune system. So it doesn't matter if it's an allergy, humoral aspect, or if it's an infection or viral, or if it's just the fact that you've got a leaky gut wall, so everything's stripping through in a high dose. You need to take that inflammation and immune challenge out of the picture, otherwise the body can't change. So I would start treating the gut. I wouldn't start by throwing in a heap of tryptophans, because it's likely to go down the other way. But it'd be really fun for those that aren't using a serotonin reuptake inhibitor to play around a little bit. I know it sounds funny, but you want to take responsibility for your own health. You're already, you're doing this thing. You're driving this vehicle. It's your body. So if you want serotonin in your brain, you don't use a serotonin reuptake inhibitor. You use 5-hydroxytryptophan at about 150 milligrams. It takes about an hour to get from your stomach to your brain and release serotonin, which will reduce anxieties, worries, panic, and you can control that. About 3 hours later, it's all gone.
And that bypasses the quinolinic acid pathway.
Exactly. So you can bypass the tryptophan steal and get some happy chemicals in your brain. So things like Resilience, things like Gut-Right, things like multifood, just to build that up. Now, also look at No Whey protein, which has got a particular hydrolyzed collagen peptides called Body Balance. The reason why I'm going to say Body Balance, and this everyone gets mad at me when I do this, but the reason why, if you're anorexic, I would use Body Balance is because it's got the good fat burning ability. It builds muscle, it builds bone, it builds collagen and connective tissue. So to regenerate those ligaments and tendons, but also rebuild your lips and your cheeks and all those other beauty applications. Plus, collagen is so bloody important to give you a nice thick dermis so you don't see the lumps and bumps in the subcutaneous tissue. If you're seeing dimples, if you're seeing weird stuff, it's more often a dermal problem than it is a fat problem.
Of course.
If you've got a good, plump, healthy dermis full of collagen, just like lips and cheeks and that, you don't see the wrinkles.
Of course.
And if you've got big, healthy dermis, you don't see as much cellulite. And skinny, fat people suffer a lot with bloody cellulite. So the No Whey protein can build the bone, look after and prevent the osteoporosis, build the connective tissue, build the ligaments. Your gut is all connective tissue. And it does all of that. And compared to whey, when you train for these people exercising, you'll burn twice as much fat. I'm going to get hate mail by telling anorexics how to burn fat. But you got to understand, their goal is to get rid of this bloody fat pocket that they can see in the mirror. And in the meantime, they're destroying their muscle and bone to do that. If you can help them to take control of their body, their mental, brain, and their body composition with these tools, they don't have to do themselves that chemotherapy style of fat loss.
I've given bulimics Body Balance, absolutely. There is another very interesting study they did. This is just a few months ago, pretty recently, and it was published in Psychoneuroendocrinology. So it's a really interesting paper where they look at the brain. And they look at the hormones and associated with the brain. So it's a paper focused on it. I love this area. And basically what they did was they found that bulimics have this altered cortical problem, and it was specifically in bulimics. So this is not for anorexics. It probably may work for anorexics, but this was totally... And bulimics have a different perspective on people's faces. Like they believe that this is how they measure perceptions. They say, here's a face. What does it look like? Angry.
Oh, wow.
And they pick more anger face. They look on the negative side of things all the time. So that's how they measure it in the study. So I found that interesting too.
Yeah.
But normal people go...
Their own face?
Any face. They show them series of faces, and normal people go, oh yeah, they're happy, and a bulimic go, they're angry. Yeah, and so that's how they measure the perceptions. And what they did was they gave them an intranasal dose of a hormone called oxytocin. Now,
that's an orgasm one, isn't it?
It's an orgasm one. It's a love one for the romantics out there.
For the romantic.
It's released when you get a hug from your boyfriend/girlfriend or wife, husband, whatever, or your mistress. If you're into that, I'm not too sure.
I get a stress chemical release when John hugs me.
Yes.
That's a bit weird though, isn't it? He's a predator.
Well, only when he grabs my ass I get a bit of stress. But, I told him I'm married now, and he said...
It's because he's looking you in the eyes when he grabs your ass. That makes it so weird. Damn close talkers.
I know.
Anyway, what the hell were you? I just interrupted.
That's right. He's a very nice man, I think. So anyway, he's so this oxytocin. What they did, because it's a peptide, so it's a protein, so you can't take it orally. So what they did was they snorted up the nose of bulimics, and that changed their perception of the angry face and made that angry face a happy face. So is there a way you can change perceptions? Yes, but it's awkward. It's oxytocin. So. Because they lack a lot of, they have a lot of self-hate bulimics, and so they're anorexic. They have a low level of oxytocin. So if they
and that's the love chemical.
The love
Remember,
chemical.
we did a heap of podcasts with Sam Patrick, and it was all about self-love for oxytocin.
Yep. And
add that to my prescription.
I'll read this. Basically, we found that a single dose of oxytocin reduced vigilance towards angry faces in patients with bulimia, as well as healthy women. So it improves everybody's... If you're in love, everything's good, right? And this chemical makes you in love, if that makes sense. It gives you that oxytocin. So this...
But you can love yourself.
You can, and this is where you got to teach people. We've got to give these people hugs. We've got to give these people affection.
But they've got to hug themselves too a bit.
Yeah, right? Absolutely.
I don't know.
That's a hard thing.
I don't think I can just walk around giving anyone that come into my clinic an oxytocin surge.
Oh, if you
people have been sued for that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, you don't want to give them an oxytocin surge, not like John does. So that's an interesting paper, and that
is interesting.
I'm not a fan of spraying oxytocin up the nose, but I'm a fan.
There's a big link with progesterone and oxytocin.
Very
too,
much so.
It?
If you're low in progesterone, you can't really have good oxytocin.
Okay, and to know if you're low in progesterone for the people out there, or typically women out there, progesterone is the hormone that holds the period in.
Yep.
So in the first 2 weeks, you're building the period. The next 2 weeks, progesterone's supposed to hold it in and stop the estrogen from making things change.
Correct.
So the way to know if you're low progesterone, typically mid-cycle and around ovulation, you might get some spotting. You might get like PMT at ovulation. You might be getting periods every 2 weeks instead of every 4 weeks. Also, you typically manifest with estrogen dominance, which is fluid, swelling, bloating.
Yep, and also the symptoms of putting weight on around your hips, and also you lose a lot of hair because progesterone is a 5-alpha reductase inhibitor. So you get you feel very stressed. So if you've got high cortisol, progesterone is depleted anyway, and your thyroid level goes down because progesterone is required for deiodinase.
See, it's all, and this is what I'm saying. You screw around with these hormones. Yeah, it's a management issue, man. That's going to force things happen. But if you don't get towards the cause, which is your brain deciding that what you're seeing is different, but also the massive link with the gut.
Yes.
Oh, in regards to, I found a cool study on ginseng. Right. Ginseng showed that it could change the mood and behavior, really, especially for eating disorders, and it does that by manipulating the immune and inflammatory mediators through the body.
I love it.
So that product of ours, Alpha Mars, the funny thing is about that, we get a lot of testimonials coming back from people that have lost a lot of body weight and their menstrual cycles disappeared, their hormone levels are out of whack, and they want to get their periods back.
Yes.
And we to prescribe a product called Alpha Mars, which has got the ginsengs, and we do that to increase the hormone load. But it's kind of really cool to think someone out there that's their hormones are low, they're not getting a menstrual cycle, their body's suffering because of it in regards to bone, hair, skin, nails, all that sort of cardiovascular, respiratory health, asthma. Not many people realise that adult asthma is usually associated with estrogen progesterone imbalances.
Yep, very much so.
So once those things go out of whack, we often give people Alpha Mars to increase their hormone load, gets that menstrual cycle back on. It also switches off of that inflammation and that sort of stuff. So and that ginseng, I didn't really understand that mechanism that ginseng was doing, having such amazing behavioural effects.
It's a huge hormone. So I mean, there's lots.
What about calories?
calories.
I know we don't want to talk too much about calorie surplus.
No.
Now, this is the challenge that I had in my clinic. You couldn't go through and say someone, you need to get bigger.
Yeah.
Or we need to put muscle on. Or you need to bulk up. Don't ever say that. But so what I had to do, I had to treat it a little bit differently. So I realised that the body requires a certain amount of essential fatty acids to be able to create structure. You know, your retina, your cell membranes, your arteries, your red blood cells, all these things need oils. I mean, consider your body 60, 70% water. You've got to separate that water somehow. That's separated by oily compartments. We need 30% of our calories to come from oils in a combination of different types. Yeah. If you only did sloppy vegetable oil, you'd be a swishy mess. Yeah. You need to combine saturated fat, unsaturated fat. So you need to try to make sure you get adequate fats out of your diet to be able to control inflammation and your body composition. Protein needs to be adequate. We need to calculate based on your muscle mass how much protein you require. So what I used to do in my clinic is I'd say, right, protein adequate, fats have to be here because we have to rebuild cellular structures. And then what we'd do is we would have freedom to move with the carbohydrate.
Depends on your activity.
Exactly. So then what we would do is we would tailor the carbohydrate requirements to their diet and exercise plan, their autopilot structure. So because they like the structure, they like that, they don't like change and that sort of stuff, we work with that structure and say, okay, so when you're training, how do you train? How often do you train? How many calories you burn and all that sort of stuff. And we would actually tailor the carbohydrates to make sure they've got adequate fuel to get through their daily activity. We wouldn't go and give extra because we don't necessarily need them to bulk up as such. We just need them to stop breaking things down.
Correct.
And we don't need to bulk up. And the good thing is we also know how to manipulate your body to get rid of that little pocket that you see in the mirror that you want gone.
And the way they get rid of that is by starving and look, you're absolutely right.
Exactly. So what would you rather do? You give someone actually a tool that works to move that bloody thing out, or you do the chemotherapy style weight loss, which is hopefully there's some of your cells left by the time you get rid of that pocket. But the problem is our body's weird. It will preserve that pocket if you starve yourself.
Yes.
It has the opposite effect.
And you know, these women with, you know, these sort of issues, usually women, of course, men get it too, but it's absolutely a horrendous situation when the altered thinking comes in because you just, you know, in the old days, just saying someone, no, you know, you're the right weight. And they go, no, I'm not. And they go, they won't believe you.
No.
It doesn't work. Matt, we've sort of gone over time.
That's because you waffle shit, Steve.
Oh, well, we're definitely right at a time, Matt. We've got to go.
Yeah, stop speaking shit, Steve. Shit. Thanks for having us.
Have a good one. See you later.
Ooh. Sound like Leonardo DiCaprio. Yeah, that was my Kate Winslet voice. Oh, Leonardo, you want to give me a good rogering?
Yeah, you got to do your clap and you got to press the timer.
How did you know I got? Oh,
that's not a real clap. You got to make sure.
Well, I was a bit nervous. I was all flustered.